Quiet Lakes. And I am super excited to introduce you to our first speaker. Sergeant Dave Moffat is the Ontario Provincial Police Coordinator. He's been a member of the force for 28 years, and his focus has always been on traffic and marine. He's patrolled the waters in Muskoka for many, many years, including being a marine instructor since 2001. He looks after everything marine with the OPP and is passionate about boating safety. Thank you for joining us. On to you, Dave.
Thank you so much, Diana, and thank you to the MLA and the SQL for allowing me to speak today. I'm just going to share my screen. I truly believe that this is such an important topic when it comes to marine safety, and unfortunately, I'm the guy that has to learn of all the horrific occurrences that happen across the province in OPP jurisdiction. So first, I just want to talk about some of our statistics with the OPP. We obviously patrol most of the lakes in Ontario, a lot of the Great Lakes, except for the Golden Horseshoe. That's basically our area across the province. And I just wanted to let you know with our statistics here, we have 22 and 21, and there's a percent change there we can talk about, and then our 2023 year to date. So it looks like our people are doing some amazing work out there. A lot of liquor charges, a lot of vessel stops. We're getting impaireds off the water, so really important work out there. Now, of course, when we're talking about avoiding tragedy, I'm going to talk about life jackets, and we'll get to that in a second. But just to give you a couple stats about our ages of our deceased victims, we can see they're all over the map there, right from under 15 years old, right up to 75 plus. Time of day the occurrence are mostly on daytime. 92% of our fatalities are males. I don't think that's surprising to anybody. And when we look at alcohol, a lot of people think that alcohol's, it's impaired. That's the reason why we have these fatalities. And 31% alcohol is involved, or alcohol and drugs are involved, but only 3.2% are impaired. So a very small percentage of our fatalities are actually impaired people that we know of. So when we talk about life jackets, as Diana said, I've been on the lakes for many, many years, and the lakes across Ontario, and these are the common excuses I get about people not wearing life jackets. The ones I kind of look and shake my head is that I get a bad tan. I never see the police here, so why should I wear a life jacket? My help gets the boat ready. I've had that a couple of times in Muskokas. It's my friend's boat, not really sure where they are. So it's about being properly, you're ready for your trip. Sorry, I'm going to fly through this. I have lots of information here. So when we talk about our marine fatalities over the last 13 years, we can say now a marine fatality is a fatality that involves a vessel underway, and these people have entered the water involuntarily. Doesn't mean that they're diving off the boat to swim. It just means they entered the water involuntarily. So over the last 13 years, including this year, we've lost 305 people in OPP patrolled waterways. And with that stat is a staggering stat that 265 of these people were not wearing life jackets, which equals 86.7% of our fatalities. So common occurrence, we look at the stats, obviously a very common occurrence through our collision statistics or our fatality statistics. So what's happening in these fatalities? So this is the last 8 years of data, and this is 8 years ago we started collecting really good data. So this is why I can only go back 8 years. But you can see the top left two parts of this, it talks about falling overboard and capsizing. That is the major reason why people are dying on our waters, not because of collisions. Collisions, 10%. That's it. That's our fatalities. But on the other hand, if we look at our personal injury collisions and our property damage collisions, we can say that in those crashes, 76.5% were collisions. So in my opinion, when we talk about what's the difference between a personal injury collision and a fatality, I've investigated many car collisions in my day. I was a collision reconstructionist, collision investigator, really. And it's a matter of milliseconds. That's the difference between someone that's injured and someone that unfortunately dies. So that's 357 have been reported because there's not a requirement to report boat crashes in Ontario. So what does that say about our fatalities this year? We've had 8 fatalities of people just falling off their boat. We've had 6 fatalities from the boat capsizing and 2 fatalities due to collisions of vessels. And this is across Ontario. So if you look at our length of vessels, what kind of boats are being involved here? We can, out of our 261 fatalities over the last 10 years, we can say that 86.6% of our fatalities were due in vessels 6 meters and under, which is 19.1 feet. And they're small vessels, and that will include all paddle craft or muscular power craft, I guess. Over 6 meters, only 27% of our fatalities. And the size of the vessel, there's some reports that we just can't determine what the size of the vessel is through the report, and we're still trying to determine that. But I would say in the last 5 years of data, we know exactly what the size is. This is from previous to 5 years. So what does that mean this year? 2023, you can see motorized vessels. We had 5 fatalities. Canoes and kayaks are still on there with 5 and 2 respectively. And then we had 3 PWC fatalities. People being thrown from the PWC. We had a collision in Wasaga Beach where 2 PWCs hit each other, killed a guy. So they are a big concern, obviously. But when we look at the 10-year trend, it's only 5% of our fatalities. 35 and like motorized vessels and canoes are pretty close together. So this is the big thing. If I haven't, by giving you the data that I've given you already, if I haven't kind of made you think about wearing a life jacket, if you're one of those people that don't, I'm hoping that this might give you a little better data. Okay, I was involved with Transport Canada and the Canadian Safe Boating Council with this research. It was called the shock factor. And everyone thinks that if they fall in cold water, that's when they gasp. That's when they'll involuntarily take that big breath of water, and which will cause a drowning. So this study, I guess, was really well done. And I went down to Keswick and I got into 4 scenarios. And the top left and the bottom right are 2 scenarios which involves VR glasses. And the top left is on a fishing boat. The top left is on a stand-up paddleboard. The bottom right is on a fishing boat. And that kind of measures what your body does when you all of a sudden fall off. What happens to your heart rate? What happens to your breathing? I'm wearing this exoskeleton kind of shirt underneath my t-shirt, and which was recording all this data. The bottom left and the top right are being plunged into a pool. One of the pools is 16 degrees, so it's cold water. The other pool is 90 degrees. So what I learned from this which was really interesting, I thought, was that if you look at this data, you can see 2 circles. The red circle is the VR experiences, and the purple circle are the dunking experiences. And when they look at your increased ventilation just by falling in the water or just by falling off the vessel, 65%, my ventilation increased 65% on both the SUP and the fishing boat. And then when I was dunked, my ventilation increased 180% in, get this, in the warm water, and only 110% in the cold water. So it was the warm water that I was getting the most reaction. And so when you look at all this data, just by falling off your boat and into the water, it gives you the gasp reflex, no matter what the temperature of the water is. And what they can look at, I was participant 32. I think they have 80% participants. They're looking at all the data, and they can look at my data and say, you know what, when you fall in the water involuntarily, you will automatically have that gasp, that involuntary gasp. And if you gasp that water inside, there's a very, very good chance you can drown. And I can attest to that information because you know, we have had very, very good swimmers that were part of the investigation that have drowned just by falling off an SUP. So bottom line is, please respect the water, respect that the water can take your life away in a matter of minutes, and to protect yourself. So how do we avoid tragedy? We make good decisions. That's basically it. And there's a couple here that, you know, we know about the don't cruise with alcohol or booze, but wear your life jacket, respect the water, and get everybody engaged so that you can make your trip a safe trip from leaving your cottage to going to where you need to go and then coming back. Okay. And so I kind of flew through that. So anyway, I hope that with the information I gave you, that you might think twice about not getting in a boat without a life jacket on. There's so many good life jackets out there that there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be wearing a life jacket, because the inflatable life jackets are a great purchase. So anyway, thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Diana, for the invite to the MLA.
Thank you very much, Dave. Really interesting research around the shock factor. I'd heard about some of this in the past, but those were really, you know, incredible stats, and having it be you that we're seeing doing that, and know that you know what you're doing on the water. So, you know, if it's happening to somebody with 28 years experience, wow.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with the shock factor is that I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. And I still reacted like that. They didn't say, okay, 1, 2, 3, you're going to be dunked, but I knew I was going to be dunked at some time.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And as you said, make good decisions.
That's
Thank you very much for joining us today, Dave. And we will be having a QA session after Scott's presentation. So anyone who has a question for Sergeant Moffat, please feel free to have that registered while we're going. On to you, Lawton.
Thank you, Diane. We are really lucky to have Scott Ferguson take time out of his busy schedule to talk to us about 10 tips to avoid tragedy on the water. Scott is an MLA board member. He's located on Lake Muskoka. He's a longstanding member of the Canadian Power Squadron, a certified water ski instructor, an avid night boarder, and get this, he has piloted his Sea-Doo across much of Ontario from Quebec to Manitoulin Island. Now, as is obvious from his presentation, he is an advocate for safe boating. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen, set up my presentation. And I'll look for my panel members to put a thumbs up. They can see my presentation. Great. So this topic is avoid boating tragedy to avoid scenes like this. Now, some people say, what's the big deal? After all, I can drive a car. Well, boating isn't like driving a car, and you'll see many examples in this presentation. This module is an opinion piece. Whoops, sorry. This module is an opinion piece. By viewing it, you acknowledge that it is not a substitute for on-the-water training, on-the-water supervision, use of good judgment, or legal advice. Tragedies on the water occur every year. I believe that most are avoidable. Now, my concern is collisions because Muskoka is somewhat unique. Very high-powered boats and a lot of congestion compared to most other waterways that I have traveled. And so that is my concern, and that's what motivated me to do this webinar. I also believe that obeying the law is only the beginning. I've got to believe that most of the boaters in recent tragedies had an operator's card. So the question is, what's going wrong or what can go wrong? And that's what we're here to explore. The primary boating law, or law applying to boating, is the Canada Shipping Act 2001 and regulations. However, I believe to avoid boating tragedy, we have to embrace safety and courtesy. The law says don't boat while impaired, and as we just heard, safety includes wear a PFD, which can be almost impossible to put on after you're in the water. So within the context of don't boat while impaired and wear a PFD, I'm going to offer offer 10 best practices to avoid boating tragedy. 10 practices in 10 minutes. Not everything I say is a suggestion. Some of these practices are the law. Number 1, avoid complacency. I can do this route blindfolded. When I look around, I see some boaters that drive as if they are. All of the recent collisions that I've heard about in Muskoka took place during routine trips and chores and to and from dinner out. So we must be careful not to let familiar circumstances make us complacent. This is my view, piloting somebody's wonderful 100-year-old Manette. In boats like these, it's so easy to sit back, relax, and just soak in the nostalgia, not really aware of what's in the water. Look at how much my view is obscured by the deck of this boat. So in boats like this, in any boat, we must not be complacent. Number 2, be alert. Boating is about shared space, space that is shared by children, sailors, boats 100 years old, paddleboarders, families, wake surfers, and kayaks. Everyone deserves to have a great day in Muskoka. No one should ever feel unsafe on the water. In that collage, did you notice a swimmer? He popped up. I didn't mention him, but he did pop up. Would you be alert enough to notice him in the water? Number 2, be alert. Avoid distraction. Distraction from technology and from passengers. I've seen people drive down the lake actually facing backwards, talking to their passengers. The law requires that we know our surroundings 360 degrees at all times. That means I recommend that we look 1 kilometer in all directions. That is like looking from Port Sandfield to the Lake Joseph Club, from Windermere to Tobin Island, from Walker's Point to Browning Island, or from Breezy Point to the Kettles. Rather than be a distraction, ask your passengers to help. That was one of Dave's slides. Ask them to help have a lookout for oncoming boats, hazards, or people in the water. Look behind you before you turn and before you slow down. Every time I slow down, I turn my head and look behind me to make sure I'm not going to get clobbered from behind. The law says that we must avert collision every way we can. But what if I can't see a kilometer ahead? What if there are islands in the way? Which brings us to number 3, manage blind spots. I think with all of the islands in Muskoka, channels, and bays, I think blind spots are a huge issue, a huge risk in Muskoka. Now, many people think it's really cool to whip around a corner like this at high speed, really close to shore. But what if you encounter this? To avoid boating tragedy, I believe that we should draw an imaginary circle in the water at the limit of our as far as we can see. And by the time we get to that circle, slow down your boat until you are going safe speed. For me, that means I slow down my boat until it is no longer planed off. Why safe speed? That's the law. The law says we must operate our boats at safe speed that circumstances require. That law applies anywhere and everywhere. And in Muskoka, blind spots are a significant circumstance. Let's say we want to cut between these 2 islands. I think it's risky to be this close to shore and cutting at a sharp angle. We're leaving no space for boats in the blind spot to come around the corner and pass us safely. I believe we should stay away from these islands and then turn 90 degrees to leave plenty of space for any boats in the blind spot to pass by safely. Number 4, keep your distance. What if there just isn't enough room? These islands we're going to go between these 2 islands. They're just too close together. In my example, each is less than 30 meters, gives us less than 30 meters from shore. 30 meters is approximately half the length of a hockey rink. The law says less than 30 meters from shore in another boat, the speed limit is 9 kilometers an hour. Think of speed walking. That means your bow is down and not up. Sign or no sign, less than 30 meters, speed limit is 9. Now, the law says that we need to keep approximately half a hockey rink of space between us and shore or another boat. I believe that this law is outdated. Look around you. You see boats 21 feet, 23 feet, 27 feet, 33 feet in Muskoka with hundreds of horsepower producing huge and powerful waves, and you see high-powered personal watercraft. I believe in today's Muskoka environment, we need to add another half a hockey rink of space between us and shore or another boat. Or go 9 kilometers an hour. I was paddleboarding, my wife was kayaking, we were side by side, and a boat cut between us towing his granddaughter on water skis. Both of us almost capsized. We asked him why he did it. He said 2 reasons. One, that was the fastest route back to his dock, probably shaved 10 seconds off his trip. Secondly, he said he knew he could pull it off. The law, safety, and courtesy were all violated in this situation. I don't think anyone should feel unsafe in the water, including granddaughters. While I was preparing this presentation, a young woman was water skiing in Muskoka. A personal watercraft was following her, cutting back and forth in her wake, and at one point was only 5 feet behind her. What if she'd fallen? What if she had fallen? Now, who was operating the personal watercraft? Was it a drunken 16-year-old boy? No. In this case, it was a middle-aged woman who told the water ski family, "You don't own the lake. I can do whatever I want." Not according to the law, she can't. The law, safety, and courtesy were all violated in this situation. Never follow a human being who's being towed. If you see reckless or illegal use of a boat, take a photograph of 3 things: the vessel, the operator, and the license number. Video is even better, and report it to the OPP. Let's look at the length of a hockey rink. The law says that we must provide half a hockey rink of space to boats or shore, or be going 9 kilometers an hour, speed walking. I recommend we provide an entire hockey rink of space in today's Muskoka. How much space do you provide? Number 5, manage collision course. What exactly is collision course? Well, when you see a boat approaching, fix a point on your gunnel where that boat is heading. Watch what happens to that spot. If that spot keeps moving forward, he'll pass in front of us. If that spot keeps moving behind, he'll pass behind us. If that spot doesn't move, that's exactly where it's going to crash through us. In collision course, don't keep people guessing and don't play chicken. Indicate your intention early on. Now, unlike cars, boats don't have turn signals. So to indicate your intention, point with your nose and communicate to the other boat that you're going to give them plenty of space. Number 6, give right of way. The law says boats from the right have the right. If this red boat is on a collision course, stop. Yes, stop. Even in the middle of the lake, stop, or pass behind it with plenty of space. Boats from the left, give us the right of way. You may proceed. However, proceed with caution. They may not know that we have the right of way. And the law says we must do everything possible to avert a collision. Be careful. If there is enough space, you can proceed. Paddle boards, paddle boats, any human-powered vessel, they have the right of way no matter which direction they come from. If they're especially vulnerable, slow down to 9 kilometers an hour. Get your bow down and give them space, safer space. Give them a break and make no wake. These are ships to be respected as such. Don't ever cut in front of them. If you stall, they're too slow to stop. They'll crush you. Pass from behind with plenty of space. Number 7, operate PWCs responsibly. As Lawton says, I have a lot of experience operating a PWC. And what we have to do is compensate for power, speed, and the fact that they're very slow to stop. All of these activities are against the law anywhere in Canada. Why? Because all of these vessels are going more than 9 or 10 kilometers an hour, closer than 30 meters or half a hockey rink. Let's say you're in a PWC and you want to approach the dock. The law says that within half a hockey rink, you must be going 9 kilometers an hour. However, a PWC is slow to stop. It takes a half a hockey rink to even get down to 9 kilometers an hour in a PWC. To approach a dock, we must slow a PWC down an entire hockey rink from shore. Let's say you're towing water skiers, boarders, or kids in tubes, and they fall, they need a break, and now you're circling back and they're in the water. Approach humans in the water on the driver's side so you never lose sight of them, and stay downwind. The wind pushes your boat faster than the people in the water. If you're upwind, your boat's going to roll right over them. Number 9, turn off headlights. Some boats today are equipped with car-style headlights. Don't use them. In a boat, they illuminate next to nothing, and they blind us and other boaters from seeing each other and seeing where we're going. The idea of night boating is to dim all lights and to dilate your pupils like a night pilot does, so you can see as much as you possibly can. Finally, number 10, rise above it all. Never look through a windshield at night. The windshield reflects lights, even those lights in your boat required by law. You're basically driving blind. I love night boating, but you couldn't pay me enough to look through a windshield at night. Safety, courtesy, and the law. To avoid boating tragedy, avoid complacency, be alert. Manage blind spots. There are so many in Muskoka. Keep your distance. Manage collision course. Give right of way. Operate PWCs responsibly. Approach humans in the water on the driver's side and stay downwind. Turn off headlights and never look through a windshield at night. We have 6 separate e-learning courses on boating. Each is an entire training program in just 9 to 19 minutes. To view them, go to the MLA website and look up Be a Better Boater. Have fun, stay safe. I'll see you on the water. I'm Scott Ferguson.
Thanks, Scott. That's a really informative presentation, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about safe boating. Well, I think I missed at least 6 points. That was really well done. I'm going to keep those 10 tips in my boat and in my desktop folder. Thank you very, very much for doing this. Diana.
Thanks a lot. And yes, again, thank you to Scott and Dave. Very, very interesting. We have the questions open right now. And if we do not get a chance to get through all of them, please be assured that we will follow up with each one. If you have your email registered, we will follow up with you. One of the first questions, and this is for you, Dave, do boat-related offenses affect a person's MTO license?
So the only boat-related offense that affects the MTO license is an impaired charge or a warning. So it has to do with alcohol or drugs. Right.
Okay, great. Another question. In your work with the Government of Canada, has there been some considerations on sponsoring life jackets for those who cannot afford them?
Yeah, really good question. And we at the OPP really believe that we need to get them out. The Canadian Safe Boating Council has done an incredible job getting life jackets out to those people that can't afford them all throughout the country. We at the OPP, we obtained about 180 life jackets last year from Boating Ontario, and we distributed them through the province. We're still working, and unfortunately, it's private industries that we have to work with. It is never through Transport Canada or the ministry in Ontario. It is private industries, and it's programs that we like to do here.
Okay, and I had heard that about Canadian Safe Boating Council. I know in some of the meetings I had attended that they're very active in distributing free life jackets. And I'm glad to hear that Boating Ontario is also being such a good steward with that. So fantastic. Someone said that you had shown 3 types of life jackets at the beginning, and they just wanted you to explain those 3 types of life jackets.
Okay. So very quickly, I can talk about that. Let's go back. So the 3 life jackets that I've shown is one's a personal flotation device. The other one is a small vessel life jacket. So the one on the left is a personal flotation device that is common. It's called an inherently buoyant life jacket. This life jacket, it's a personal flotation device actually. So it's not designed to keep your head out of the water if you fall into the water and you get knocked unconscious. The one in the middle is called a small vessel life jacket. It is designed to keep your head above water. And the one on the right is probably the best piece of kit you could ever buy for yourself if you are a boater. It's an inflatable life jacket, and it's the most comfortable item you could imagine. And it is something that, you know, I've come off the lakes and I've gone to dinner at my house, and my wife looks at me and goes, "Are you going to take that life jacket off?" And it is so comfortable. So what it does is it's got a CO2 cartridge inside, and if you fall in the water, it automatically blows up into a life jacket, which will keep your head out of water, and very vibrant colors so that you'll be seen in the water. So if you are a boater, by all means, you know, put some money aside. They're not cheap. And be careful. You know, if you buy, there's some great ones at Costco, but they have a lot of care. And you know, if you're getting a great deal, then be careful what you buy. it's, if you pay some money, then you'll get a good product. Okay. And make sure that they are Transport Canada approved. You can buy stuff on Amazon right now, which is not, and which is absolute garbage when it comes to using them properly on the water.
Very good tips. Thank you. Yes, making sure that they're approved is very important. Another question for you, Dave, is the OPP and the Canadian Coast Guard the only enforcement patrolling Muskoka? And has there been any thought to adding partners to aid in that enforcement, or using video captured evidence by residents and people on the water?
Yeah. So the first question, is there anyone else that we work with? We are very, very strong partners with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. We do all across the province. We do joint patrols. There are places where we do joint patrols with Transport Canada as well, the marine safety inspectors. But on the Muskoka Lakes, it is really us. The Coast Guard jumps on the lake to look after our navigation aids, and that's their role on the lake. And the MNR comes obviously to look after fishing, but they have all the powers in the world to write Canada Shipping Act tickets as well as liquor license tickets. So they do as much as we do on the lakes as well. Sorry, the second part?
I think the second part was if you could use video captured evidence from people watching something on the water.
The biggest thing to get a conviction in court when it comes to the PONs or tickets that we write on the lake is we have to have identification. And basically we need the 5 W's, right? The who, what, when, where, and why, and how. And the best thing you can do is take a video of it. And if we can ID the person through that video and the vessel that they're using, etc., is fantastic. I have a lot of calls when I used to work the Muskoka Lakes that it would be, there's a red boat that came by my cottage with really loud mufflers and it shook my windows. There's not a lot I can do with that, right? But it's a little red boat that came from that bay that has a cottage around the corner. That's a lot better information than the little red boat. So just give us as much as possible and we will do our best to follow up.
Fantastic. This is a very interesting question because we get this a lot with Safe Quiet Lakes. And I'm going to let you answer this one, Dave. What is the definition of a shoreline? Is a dock considered a shoreline or another vessel in the water? And by that, I think I mean the distance, the speed and distance.
I absolutely get that. And when we look at the 10-30 rule, right, 10 kilometers an hour at 30 meters from shore, and that is shore. It doesn't include the dock. It is shore. The Muskoka Lakes has a VOR in place, which is a vessel operation restriction regulations, which includes all docks, all rafts, all markers, down to 9 kilometers an hour. And I agree with Scott that I think it's a little outdated. I think we need a little stronger, and it's a hard thing to lay, because we need evidence of how close people are together. So it's a little better than the Muskoka Lakes, but it does just include the shoreline.
Okay. And our PWCs, are life jackets required to be worn or just on the boat or on the PWC?
Really good question. We do have, no matter what vessel you operate in Ontario or in Canada, excuse me, you're not required to wear a life jacket. However, you have to have one on board, properly fitting and in good shape. So that includes the PWC. Now, we have had, including this year, we've had a fatality where someone was operating a PWC, got knocked off, and they didn't, I'm assuming the gas factor that we talked about happened, and they never surfaced. There's more of a chance to get thrown from a PWC, to fall off a PWC, and in my opinion, wear a life jacket. Any vessel wear a life jacket just for that reason, right? But a PWC, there's a greater chance for being on the water. So the answer is no, but yes, please.
And what about age on PWCs? Is there's no requirement?
Another great question. No one under the age of 16 can operate a PWC.
Okay.
And that has happened many times across the province. And we've had some awful collisions because young people are operating PWCs.
Can I do a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Dave, I've heard people say that regarding that rule, I was operating the PWC even though my 9-year-old was steering in my lap. What's your view of that?
Well, if they're steering, they're operating. Simple as that. It's like people in boats that they have their kids sitting in their lap and operating. It's still operating. They're required to have a PCOC if they're operating that vessel. And with the PWC, there's an age limit.
Okay, wonderful. I think we've got time for 2 quick questions. Is a deafeningly loud boat an actionable offense?
It is. So this is something that I've struggled with for my whole career about mufflers and non-muffled vessels. So you're required to have a muffler on a vessel. Simple as that. But sometimes it's hard to determine if there's a muffler on there, and it doesn't give you a stipulation of what kind of muffler. So a lot of boats put muffler tips on vessels, and they're still loud. It's defined as a muffler, but they're still loud. SQL is doing some awesome work on trying to get a decibel reading, and I truly believe that you'll see that law in place in the next couple of years. So that's what we need as enforcement officers. We need to have something quantitative that we can use to take someone to court, to explain to the justice of the peace that, you know, their decibel reading was 100 decibels, and that's, you know, the law states E. So we need that, and I truly believe that you'll see that in the future.
Thank you. There's quite a few comments here thanking both Scott and Dave. So very nice comments. Thank you, everyone. And the last question is, somebody has said that they're close to an Airbnb right next door to them, and they have very loud, very fast powered PWCs and boats. At what point can they phone OPP about something that they see?
Really great question. And, you know, Scott and I believe the biggest piece to safe boating is the courtesy piece. And when someone rents a Airbnb for an astronomical amount of money, they want to get the best use out of that lake and their toys, etc. But they don't understand the courtesy piece. So if you look at the laws that Scott talked about, the slow at shore, passing other vessels, and if for any reason you think there's some kind of dangerous activity or something that the police should be aware about, call us. If you don't call us, you're not going to get any action. And if you're watching these people driving like they do on these small lakes and something happens, you will feel awful. So please call us. We always, once it calls in our dispatch, they'll have an officer assigned to it. It depends on the priority of calls, but we will get there. We will get there. So please, please, please call us. Okay,
thank you. And again, there are more questions. Some of them relate to some Transport Canada laws and some other things. We have a great relationship with Transport Canada. We will reach out, make sure we get you answers for that and respond to you via email, because these are all captured. So thank you for attending. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to our speakers. And I'm going to pass it over to Lawton to close things off for us.
Thank you, Diana. And thanks to everybody on this webinar. Remember that the webinar will be posted on mla.on.ca with the answers to the question. And also the answers to the question and answers will be posted as well, and that were not covered in the presentation. Anyone with additional questions can email the MLA at admin@mla.on.ca, and have a great rest of your day.